This is Sherry Clergis live from Vancouver with At 45, the magazine for women over 45 who are rediscovering who we are and exploring what we want next in life. And we want more. More of everything. Love, fun, laughter, and fulfillment. So welcome. These are trying times, and our quarantine conversations are an opportunity to break out of your four walls, find some mental stimulation, laugh and share experiences. The magazine is working hard to support women, but especially in these trying times, we want to focus on getting you through them. So just a few housekeeping things. These sessions are being taped and shown on our YouTube channel. So if you do not want your personal profile out in public domain, please use an avatar. The agenda is simple. We're going to jump right into a conversation with Melody. And then the last 15 minutes, we'll open the lines up and let people tell us what they're doing in quarantine or self-isolation, and ask questions of Melody. So welcome, Melody.
Hi, Sherry. How are you?
Great, thanks.
Good.
So for those of you who are joining in, Melody Owen is a content strategist and chief storyteller at Nutritious Truth. She's an accomplished writer who recently added acting to her resume. She believes we all have a story to tell and experiences to share that will enrich others' lives. And the magazine definitely believes that. So, hello, Melody.
Hi, Sherry. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. And you're in quarantine right now, or self-isolation.
Yes, I'm in self-isolation just like everyone else. Yeah, it's an interesting experience, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And today in Vancouver, the sun is shining. It's beautiful. I wish we could go to the beach, but we can't because they're locked down.
Yeah, I wish I could go to the mountains, but they're also locked down.
Yes. It's just, it's very trying to keep yourself motivated and upbeat at times.
It is, and we can talk a little bit about that today when we talk about stories, because the narrative that we have going through our head is really important, especially at times like this.
And so you have a project called Stories That Heal, and I'd love to know more about it. How did it get started, and what exactly is it?
Yeah, so I'm a storyteller and I'm a story teacher, and I have a company called Nutritious Truth, where I help businesses, but I also do story teaching, story workshops, and story coaching for people who just want to explore their own stories. So once a month, I do a story workshop, and then once a week, I do circle coaching. So people can bring a story, share it with other people, get feedback on it. Some of the tellers that come just want to share stories and just want to connect and communicate and enrich their lives. Other people come and polish up their stories and perform them or compete them. And so that's what I do. I help people kind of play with their own stories, change their narrative, solidify their story, create positive stories, and then share them with the world. Because I believe that's one of our deepest ways of connecting. Think about, after the hunt, the people gathering around the fire, and the person who captured the saber-toothed tiger is like telling the story. I always have this image of humans as storytellers as far back as I can imagine humanity.
Well, I think it's true, from the cave art, right? And that was the first storytelling. So people have definitely needed to tell stories for centuries.
Exactly. So shall we talk a little bit about the narratives that might be going through our own minds now during the times of COVID?
I think that's a perfect subject.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about narratives in general, but because we are in the time of COVID, I will use some examples of what's going on now to just kind of explore the ideas that I want to share with people.
That sounds great.
Excellent. And ask questions along the way, Sherry, if you have them. So I guess the first thing is when we talk about our own personal stories and storytelling for healing, The first question is, what is the narrative that runs through your head? What are you telling yourself? We have many, many moments in our lives. We have our best moments and we have our worst moments, and we have every moment in between those. But what I notice is a lot of the stories that people tell themselves, a lot of the narratives that kind of float through our head are usually our worst moments. Things we did that, we wished we hadn't, we regret, that didn't go well, that we made bad decisions. We have a lot of those narratives floating around in our head, and we use those narratives to berate ourselves, to be mean to ourselves. We tend to fixate on the worst. I don't know if anyone else does that. I know, people I talk to say, oh yeah, I'm always like, we're our own worst enemies, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
I know that's me personally.
And it just makes you a normal human being. That's just, that's, for some reason, that's what humans do. But we are not our worst moments, and we are not our best moments. We are a mixture of all of our moments. And so we don't want to fixate on our worst moments. And we also don't want to fixate on our best moments, because, fixating on our best moments brings us, narcissistic leaders who don't do well for their people. Not going to mention any names. And so we don't want to fixate on our best moments or worst moments. We want to understand that we are a culmination of all of our moments. And this works for the individual, and it works for the society. We are some of our, as a society, we are some of our best moments, and we are some of our worst moments, and we are all of those moments in between. So that's my first point, that we are a mixture of moments. So when you find yourself fixating on something you've done that you regret, or a negative moment, or something that you think you should have made a better decision, remind yourself that that is one moment of time, and it does not define you. It is just a moment, and it's one of millions of moments in all of humanity. So that's the very first thing I want to kind of talk about.
Well, and it's such a comforting perspective, right? Because often we do get fixated on that particular thing, and everything else sort of becomes minimal around that.
That's right. Yeah.
Good perspective.
And that's not healing, right? That's harmful, not healing. And so we want to shift that to, right, I did that. Wish I didn't. It is one moment of my life. It does not define me. And let's look at an example. And I want to use an example from our current world, and an example that is more of a, I know that there are individuals who did this, but I think of it more as a collective moment. Some people at the start of the panic went to grocery stores and bought up all the toilet paper and bought up food staples, and kind of went home and hoarded it. And other people got really angry at them, went on social media, hated on them, unfriended people, judged them harshly. And so, and this is my second point. I have a question for you. If you were the person who had hoarded the toilet paper and hoarded the food, after you received all that hate from people you loved, people you thought were friends, people you trusted, how would you feel? Would you speak up and say, oh, you know what, you're right, I shouldn't have hoarded the toilet paper and the food, sorry? Would you have done that, or would you have been silent? So so I would not have spoken up. I would not have felt safe to speak up and talk about a mistake that I may have made, because there was so much negative anger, negative feelings and negative words around that. I would have remained silent personally, because one of the things that human wants is we want to be safe. And so to be safe, if I had made that mistake, I wouldn't have told anyone. I would have just gone, right? So
I think lots of people can identify with that example. Yeah. It's almost a matter of pride. You might have done something wrong, but you don't really want to admit it to the world.
Yeah, especially in the world is hating on you and unfriending you, or, right? We don't want to. But if we go back for a moment and think about the first point, does that moment define that person? They got scared, they got they got scared, something happened, they went out and they behaved in a way that probably wasn't the best choice. But does that one action define them? No, it doesn't. These are real human beings with many, many moments, and we are a society with many, many moments. And so that fight over toilet paper does not define us as a community, as a society, and it does not define the individuals. And so when we get really angry and we retaliate in that way, we don't leave room for any healing at all. And so for me, stories of healing are about finding new ways to respond to other people and to ourselves when those negative stories come up, either currently as they did recently or just in our heads replaying them. So the idea is to realize that that one action does not define you, and to start leaving room for other things. And so I wanted to suggest some of the tools that you could bring to those stories, those negative stories that you hold in your head, to help you change the narrative to a more helpful narrative. Because we have all done things that weren't our best moments. I mean, I have. Oh my gosh, I could sit down and tell you stories about myself that could curl your toes. I'm a horrible human being according to those moments. But I also have these other moments that make me a wonderful human being, right? Because I'm that, just human. And so I want to bring some tools to your narrative. Now, this isn't therapy and this isn't magic. These are storytelling tools that we use to kind of help us through. And the first thing, if you're thinking about the people who hoarded toilet paper, the first thing we want to do, and this can be really hard, is to go from judgment to non-judgment. We don't want to judge the behavior. And I know that sounds, difficult, because, we look at that and we're like, but Melody, it was wrong. Let's set that aside just for a moment and not judge the behavior. And so when you have a narrative running through your head, oh, I did this thing and I'm a bad human being, take a moment and say, okay, let's just, for a moment, let's set that judgment aside. Let's become non-judgmental. And so when we become non-judgmental, we can take we take those values, those morals that we feel so strongly about that make us righteous enough to create that judgment, and we set those aside and we can become curious. So my mom grew up in England during the war, and she was young, and so they had rationing. And many years later, she had dementia, and I was looking after her, and I would go to her house and I'd open her fridge and it would be packed with food. Here's this woman living alone who doesn't need this much food. And so my first instinct was to say, that's just a waste of food. Why would you do that, Mom? But I set my judgment aside. Instead of getting righteous and saying, people are starving all over the world, which is what she used to tell me when I didn't finish the food on my plate. I set it aside, and instead of bringing my values and my ethics and my morals, which are really important to me, I got curious. And I started asking her, like, what's going on? Like, you have a lot of food in your fridge, Mom, And we played around. I asked questions. We tried to figure it out. And it came back to those years growing up. She said, well, the fridge was always empty, and I get scared that I won't have enough food. And I said, okay. So putting my judgment aside, putting aside my values and my morals didn't mean that I didn't own them anymore. It just left room for me to be curious about what was going on. And that leads us to the next bit. Instead of punishment, you shouldn't do this, this is not how it works, how dare you buy all the toilet paper and hoard it, and how dare you have all this food in your fridge. Instead of punishment, we can bring in mercy. I think mercy is a really important word. Mercy, to me, means to forgive people who don't necessarily deserve our forgiveness.
And it's a word that isn't used very often anymore, I think, Melody.
Yeah, it's a word that we don't use very often. We have become merciless to ourselves, and we have become merciless to others and to our society. I was watching a news briefing today from the federal government and listening to the reporters asking questions. And they were like, well, why didn't you do it this way? And why didn't you do it that way? And why didn't you do it this way? And, that would have been easier. And I thought, wow, right? Like, we've never been here before. We've never been in this situation you know, our leaders, you know, our public health officers, this is, you know, they're trained for this, but this is still their first time. And so a little bit of mercy goes a long way, you know, just forgiving people for, you know, what's going on regardless. So no, if we've set our judgment aside and we've become curious and we start to understand people and we offer mercy, and what happens? What happens is that people start feeling safe. And when people feel safe, we are creating room for people to grow. And the same thing happens for you in your own personal stories. When you have that story going through your head, I should have done that and I did it wrong and I hurt someone, I did it all badly. And it's like, remove the judgment, take the values and good values and good morals and set them aside for a minute, get curious, try to understand, try to have some forgiveness for the wrongdoer. Deserving or not, just have a little bit of forgiveness for the wrongdoer. And at the same time, the other thing you might pull in there is a bit of validation. So think back to my mom. You know, she filled her fridge with food because she had this fear. There was a fear that surrounded the behavior. And fear is a natural human emotion. And so when we started dealing with the fear and I started validating the fear, I understand that you're afraid that you'll run out of food, Mom. Let's figure out how to make sure that doesn't happen. Even though I knew it wouldn't happen, she didn't seem to know that. So we needed to work together. So I validated her fears. We live in a society where it's like, I'm striving for happiness and I'm looking for happiness and happiness is the all important. But we have fear and we have anger and we have sadness. And if we welcome them enough that we can understand them. Now, why did people hoard toilet paper? I don't know. I'm not in their mind. I'm not in their hearts. I don't know what fears came up for them. But I know through that story about my mom hoarding food in her fridge that there's probably something behind that. So if I can validate, if I can understand the fear, if I can validate the fear and then open room for solutions. So this is the next point, instead of shutting yourself down or shutting people down, creating space for growth. Creating space for change. And that's the other really, really important part of storytelling for healing. Does that make sense, Sherry?
Oh, I'm just sitting here actually getting a little teary-eyed
Oh.
because it is, so you put it so succinctly. But the thing is, it's so easy often to give that out to people. I mean, in social media, I agree, like especially now there's a lot of anger and that on social media. But the important thing about this learning is that we need to apply it to ourselves and give ourselves that same thing. It's so important because I don't care how successful a person's life has been, you have some part of your life that you're not happy with, that has caused you grief, and to heal and get past that. I mean, that's the power of living, right?
Yeah.
We have opportunity to move forward without that baggage. So it makes a lot of sense to me.
And you're right. It's very easy for me to stand here and say this, and it can be very difficult to apply it. And so, and these are a set of tools that you can use, but they're not something that you already know and can bring up. So what I would suggest people do, and this is what I do in workshops, I'm like, let's pick a story. Just at any point, pick a story in your life that seems to haunt you. I mean, don't pick a story that retelling it will be re-traumatizing. I just want to make that point really, really clear. I come from a background of severe trauma. And Sherry, you know, I did a solo show on my story, but that was after years and years of work. So one thing we don't want to do is tell stories that will re-traumatize us. If you're not ready to tell a story, don't. But an exercise you can do is pick a story, something that kind of haunts you, like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. That makes me look like a X, whatever type of person, and that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. Take a story, kind of write it out, and then look at it and say, okay, I'm gonna really just try to set my judgment aside for a moment, right? I'm gonna put my values and put everything to the side, not because I don't have them, but because just for a moment, I just want to open some space for myself. Look at the story and get curious. Why did I do that? what happened in that moment that I did that. So I have some moments in my life where I didn't, I have this really strong value of standing up for others. And I have moments in my life, especially when I was a teenager, when I didn't do that. I didn't stand up for people, and I felt so awful afterwards. But now when I go back and I look at it, it's like, I didn't feel safe. And I'm sorry that I didn't stand up for someone at that moment. But I was young. I didn't have the tools. So I set the judgment aside. I looked at, instead of constantly punishing myself for it, brought in a little bit of mercy. I brought in some curiosity and tried to understand. And this has allowed me to kind of build the tools I need to stand up for people, to find a way to feel safe. So find a story, tell it without judgment to yourself, write it down, get curious about it, start thinking about who that person was at the time. Maybe they lacked skills, maybe they lacked knowledge, maybe they lacked experience. Just start to try to understand that. Try to understand the fears and of the anger. You know, maybe you struck out at someone verbally because you were so angry. So just say, wow, I was really angry at that moment, and that's why I said words that I shouldn't have. And now that I've done that, what new behaviors can I learn? So, and then start thinking about, you know, what experience do I have now that I didn't have then? What skills could I learn so I don't do that again? What knowledge was I missing, and where can I get that knowledge? So that is the opening of space to create a new story, to create a new narrative, to create a new set of skills, knowledge, and experiences to really become the person you want to be, and to forgive or give mercy to that old you. And honestly, I don't believe we need to forgive our old yous, but I think that some people will find it helpful. You were good enough then. You just didn't have the skills and experience or the knowledge. So make room for that, and then you can write a new story. And here's an exercise for you. Get a piece of paper, and after you've written the story as it is, get a piece of paper and write yourself a letter. You know, it's like, dear Melody, you know, that time when you yelled at that small child when you shouldn't have. At that time, you didn't have this information, you didn't have these skills, and you were an angry child because, you know, these bad things had happened to you, and that's what happened. But don't worry, you won't always go around behaving like that. In fact, you're going to learn these skills, and you're going to learn how to do this, and you're going to learn how to do that, and whatever this letter forms to be, right? Write yourself a letter and say, you know what? Yeah, you did that, but here's what you learned from it, and here's how you became a better person. Does that make sense, Sherry?
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful practice. And I'm struck by another thing as I'm listening to you. And that is the part about judgment and curiosity. So, you know, and back to the social media issue, especially nowadays, we see so many, so many people on the internet who see something and automatically judge it. I'm just going to close this one thing so it quits beeping on us. Or quick to judge what that person is saying, and all of a sudden you don't have a safe space. But if you use the judgment, put your judgment aside, and then get curious, and you reach out in a post to ask that person something about why they're feeling that way, all of a sudden you're opening conversations. So it's not just stories that heal and using those facets in that area, but it's also opening your world up to other people and to having empathy, right? For other people's situations.
Yeah. I mean, we say that we want to be on social media because we want to connect. But when we go on there and we get angry and say harmful things, right or wrong. And I'm not suggesting, I'm not going to suggest that you say to the person who hoarded toilet paper, fine, go hoard food so nobody else has any. I'm not suggesting that's what we do. I'm suggesting we, as a society and as individuals, if we can look at that behavior and make room for that person to grow, I'm suggesting that behavior won't be repeated. And we will be better people, and we will be better community, we will be better society, we'll be a better world because of that. So if we go on social media and we want to connect, connecting isn't about, I don't remember the last time somebody called me a name and I felt connected to them, right? You know, so that's not, you know, if we want to connect on social media, we may need to rethink how we do it. And I think I love social media. I think it's a wonderful thing. When I receive hateful, harmful things, I try to understand that it's not about me, it's about them. Not that it doesn't hurt sometimes. But yeah, I think if we all just slowed down a little bit, and I see that especially now in the time of COVID, I see a lot, you know, the government will put something out and then somebody will go, but I missed out and I didn't get connect. I wasn't in this and I wasn't in that. And, you know, yes, that's true. And it's okay to speak up, but creating an avalanche of anger and an avalanche of panic isn't going to do us any good. So let's say, you know, I noticed somebody had a petition online asking for the government to help self-employed people or help students. And it's like, yeah, that's a really positive way to do that. That's a positive way to go about that, rather than just getting angry and spewing it out. And I know we all need to vent. But then, you know, sometimes I vent, but I'll put it at the top of the post, I'm venting. So you don't have to read it if you don't want to know what I'm angry about today, right? Just, you know, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. So your Stories That Heal, you had a project online about people sharing stories. But tell us a little bit about that.
I did. So in February, the month of love, I did a love stories, and lots of little projects. I'll tell you about this one. I did a love stories project where every day it was, you know, it would be like love story to your mom, or love story to a neighbor, or love story to, you know, someone who made your coffee. And I wrote stories from my own life, people who, you know, showed me kindness and I was grateful. And I posted a new one every day, and I put it up on social media so other people could see it and pass it on if they wanted. And apart from that, I do the story workshops and the coaching as well. And if you don't mind, can we just talk a little bit about languaging?
Yes.
Languaging is really important in stories. So one of the things you want to do is change the language. I know sometimes people come to me and they say, yeah, but I'm not this good person yet. I haven't changed it yet. I haven't figured it out yet. I'm still anxious and angry, and I still want to bite his head off. And you know, so I can't tell a new story yet. It's like, okay, but you can, right? And it's like, I recognize I'm still angry. I recognize this is not helpful to the situation. I'm working on it, right? Or the last time, this is what happened, and now I know this. And the next time that could happen, or these are the things I could do, or I'm learning to. And I'll give you an example of this. For a long time, I was in physiotherapy. I've done some damage, and I love to hike, and I love to weightlift, and I love to go to the gym. And I was allowed to hike carefully, but I wasn't allowed to lift heavy weights. I wasn't allowed to run outside on the sidewalk. It was too hard on me. And then I got to go back to the gym. And of course, in my brain, I'm so excited. I'm sure everyone can relate to this. Yay, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to be, you know, Wonder Woman, right? But boy, I'll tell you, it's hard to get back to the gym, right? You go 3 times or twice or once and you're all excited. And then the next day you're sore and you don't want to get up and you don't want to go. And, you know, it's really, really hard. And so I'm battling with this story in my head, right? But I was, you know, and so I have this story in my head that I'm an athlete. I was a gymnast, and I you know, as old as I am, I'm over 50, I still have this story in my head that I'm an athlete, and I keep this story because it helps motivate me to stay healthy and fit. And so I have this story, and but I wasn't living that story, and so it's like getting upset with myself, and it's like, okay, well, you know, what if I just put on my shoes and walked around the block and walked past the gym today, you know, and I, you know, slowly, just kind of slowly, what if I like wrote a list of things and I put my gym bag, you know, on my office chair. So I went down, because I work at home, I put I go down to work and there's my gym bag, and it reminds me to go to the gym. And I remember one day I got up and I wanted to go to the gym. I was ready. I was motivated. I put my gym clothes on. I had my gym bag, and something happened, and I can't remember what it was. I don't know if it was an emergency client or an emergency child thing, and I got distracted. And like 4 hours later, I realized I'm sitting in my office chair with my gym clothes on. I'd completely forgotten about the gym, and I'm working away. And I said to my 16-year-old daughter, and I said, "Look at that! I got my gym clothes on today. Look at me go!"
Oh, I think we can all identify with that.
Step in the right direction. I'm going to take that as a win. And I did. I didn't make it to the gym that day, but I didn't berate myself for not going. It was like, you know what? Baby steps. I got into my gym outfit. That was better than yesterday. And I know this for some people, they're either perfection, like it's either yes or no, right? On or off, perfection or nothing. Unfortunately, that's not realistic. We're just, I'm not this perfect being. You're not this perfect being. We're not a perfect society. And so, you know, celebrate your baby steps, because when you celebrate things and you motivate yourself, you'll do better. I'll tell you a story. I coached, very first time I ever coached volleyball, I took this ragtag group of grade 9s and 10s that barely made up a team. And I was the mom. I wasn't this gym teacher, and they'd had this like volleyball coach for 2 years, grade 8 and 9. They'd never made it to finals, and nobody wanted to coach them. So I felt bad and was like, oh, girls should play volleyball, and I went and coached them. And I was watching the other coach, and he was very his team was good and they did quite well, but he was very like, do it like this, do it like this. But he was always like, if they missed a practice, he was always berating them. He was always really negative. So I'm this coach who knows nothing about volleyball because I'm a gymnast. And I told them that I can walk on my hands for you, but I don't really know a lot about volleyball. So we're just going to figure this out. We made it to the finals that year. The first year that team ever made it to the finals. And what I did was I found a grade 11 kid who plays volleyball to come in and show them actually how to do the things because I didn't know. And I motivated them and I made them a team. And I said lots of good, kind, lovely things to them. Every time we had a morning practice, I brought them breakfast. I brought them granola bars and juice boxes. And we made it to the finals, and they'd never made it to the finals. And of course, we didn't win, but we made it. And so, just this coach who'd been, this coach for 20 years couldn't get them to the finals, but he could get mad at them all the time. And he could tell them what they were doing wrong all the time. And this ragtag mom who knows nothing about volleyball got them to the finals. And it's about the languaging. So think about your languaging. Think about what you're saying to yourself. They were hardworking, and I told them that. I didn't tell them they knew how to play volleyball, but you guys work really hard. You guys are gaining the skills you need. You are more experienced now than you were last year. And that really, really helps. So think about your languaging and how you speak to yourself. Yeah. Yes.
It's amazing. You think storytelling is so simple, but there we've got like 7 things that we need to think about.
Yeah.
When we're storytelling ourselves and others.
Yes. And I'm not even talking about story structure. I'm just talking about because we already have the narrative going through our head. Like we already have that narrative. So I'm not really talking about the structure because you're already telling yourself stories. I want to help people shift those stories to better stories, to stories that are more helpful, stories that are healing, and stories that will actually help them grow as human beings, rather than, because these negative stories actually hold us back. These negative stories actually, that's how we get in our own way, is by telling these negative stories and hanging on to them and fixating on them. So we really want to just change the story, change the narrative.
Yeah, often the stories are not even true. And I think if you go through the steps, you realize that, right? If you do what you're suggesting, you will realize that the story is not true.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Harry Potter?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a scene at the very end of the last movie where Harry's in this train station with Dumbledore. And as they're leaving, Harry says, "Is this real? Or is it all in my head?" And Dumbledore looks at him and he says, "Yes, Harry, it's all in your head." What does that have to do? Of course it's real. It's in your head, right? So whatever we're telling ourselves becomes real. That's our reality because that's what we're telling ourselves. So be careful what you tell yourself, right? Be careful what stories you tell.
Absolutely.
And when you do catch yourself telling negative stories, use the tools that we talked about. Go through those tools to help you retell a more empowering story, a story that will help you heal.
That's wonderful. Now, how can people, I think you have a project or initiative going right now. How can people get in touch with you and tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I do ongoing storytelling workshops. This month I have two. One is just like how to set up a story, like the structure of a story, and how to collect stories. The other one is how to tell stories for business, how to tell your customer story. Next month I'll probably do something similar to this, actually bringing personal storytelling for healing, actually bringing people, so you'll be able to like work through your story with me and then tell your story and get feedback. I also am working on a new workshop, Stories for Grief. We often, when we talk about somebody who's passed, we often talk about the moment they died. But again, that's just a moment of time, and we fixate on it, especially in sudden deaths or violent deaths or like car accidents and things like that. But this person who died suddenly has this whole life full of moments. And so another workshop I'm working on is helping people retell grief stories from, oh, they died this way. Because, when you hear, like, somebody says, oh, if I say my mom has passed, a lot of people it's like, oh, I'm sorry, how did she die? It's the first question we ask. It's like, what do you mean, how did she die? How did she live is a far better question. So I'm working on a workshop on grief stories so that we can rewrite our grief stories from telling how people died to telling how the people we loved lived.
Oh,
that's
an amazing project and so timely because there's so much feeling right now because people have passed away. You can have proper funeral services and being able to look at that perspective and tell that person's story, and share it. That actually is very powerful. I think that would be marvelous, Melody.
Yeah. And I'm also working, so I haven't finished my grief workshop yet. I'm working on that. I have a storytelling workshop, a business storytelling workshop, a personal storytelling workshop, but I don't have the grief workshop yet. And I'm also working on, and I know this is an all women's room, so it's not as what's the word? Doesn't fit as well, but I'm actually, and I haven't started this yet, but I'm planning on doing a workshop storytelling for men. Because I believe that there are a lot of stereotypes, a lot of how men should behave, just as there are women, and that men aren't taught how to express themselves. It's one of the stereotypes that men don't express themselves. So I'm actually working on an all-male storytelling project or workshop so that men can come in and redefine who they are personally.
Oh, that sounds so interesting too.
Yeah, I think that it's necessary. So I have the 3 workshops, 2 going on this month, 1 that'll happen next month, and I have 2 more in the works.
We can't wait to hear how they all turn out. So I want people to be able to find you. So melodyowen.com, is it?
melodyannowen.com.
Okay, that's great.
melodyannowen.com, and you can always email me as well. That works. I don't use it's strange. melody@melodyowen.com is my email.
Okay, that's great. And Melody is a contributor in our magazine. She has a workshop that supports women who want to write. If you want to find that, you can go on our website at 45.com and look under the contribute tab. And so thank you again for speaking with us, Melody. It's been fabulous. I'd like to open up the calls now.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry, for bringing me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So if there's a few people on, so if you can unmute yourself and go ahead and tell us where you're from, who you are, And any questions you'd like to ask, or tell us what you're doing in self-isolation? Lisa, I see you are open. Hi, welcome.
Thank you very much for having the workshop today. I must say you've got Audrey there, and she's in my other room. I brought Marilyn for this one.
Oh.
I knew you were my sister when I had the same painting in my other room.
I love it. Your backdrop looks absolutely divine.
That's the end of my dining room here. That's my, my funky place. So anyway, thank you. I, of course, have known Melody for a few years because I'm a member of her group, YVR Authors. And so I have done several things with Melody, and she has also taught me the Zoom life, which I have now joined for obviously this COVID situation because I am on my own. So it's wonderful that she's also talking about all the storytelling, and thank you for having this today because I've been in training for 10 years for all of this. I am a writer. I've been a writer all my life, but the last 10 years have been my decade of a lot of problems, and I have learned to be a much stronger person and a writer. I have been writing solidly for years, and now I'm going through the pregnancy. I'm almost the 9th month. I'm giving birth now to all my books, my stories, my poetry, and I have a whole whack of things in the works. Melody always knows I have so much. So on your grief workshop, we'll have to chat because of course I wrote a book when I lost my canine daughter. So I have a book called Messages from the Afterlife, which was from my pup. That was the way I went through grief on that level. But I have been through personal divorce, drama, house change, financial injury, and lost a child, all in 10 years. So I do a lot of writing with affirmations. I then record my affirmations to music. I listen to them every morning. So I get on a very positive headspace. So I've been doing that. Plus I have several what I call guru girlfriends. So Elizabeth Gilbert is a big one. She's got a really nice message out there right now. Brené Brown. I like Tanya Lee, who is, her brand is French Kiss Life. And she does a lot of life coaching. So I have put a lot of really good things in my pocket. So now that COVID's come along and I went from 4 nights out with friends to nowhere, I've had to realize that this is a chance for me to grow inside and get my writing and get going and become a virtual girl with every one of you. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I've even been playing cards with my son because I haven't seen the one son I do know that I see now. My other son is estranged after my divorce. So my youngest and I go on Zoom. I got him on Zoom and we play crib and have video chats. So I'm delighted to be part of the community and learn Zoom and part of your magazine. And
well, we're so happy to have you, and you're not alone. I think at this time in our life, many women are finding the decades or the years filled with a lot different than what we anticipated. And so working together and supporting each other, it's important. And we'd love to have you contribute to the magazine. If you've got articles and stories, just go to that contribute tab. We'd love to have you participate with us.
Thank you. Marilyn said I should have been doing that. Marilyn Wilson's a friend of mine. She's been a friend for years, her kids and my kids. So yes, I probably should be doing that, but I'm got all my projects, but thank you for inviting me. I'd like that, although I'm way past at 45.
Well, we always say that life changes at 45. It's not that you have to be 45, but that you have to be past 45 and start to experience.
Well, I'm about to hit 65, so there's another.
Well, we have lots of participants, 70 and even older. Actually, on Friday, we have this session coming up. Oh no, it's Thursday afternoon at 3, and it's a woman from Australia who, with an initiative or a project called Bold Not Old, and I think she's 74. So Yeah, life keeps on going.
Well, there's a lot of fabulous women in this world, and men. I'm not saying anything about the men, but the women have been there for me. And these incredibly talented women like Melody and yourself and Marilyn and some of the women I've connected to are just like my sisters now, you know, as we're all trying to get through everything. So COVID-19 has been, just add one more to my list of whatever's this last decade, you know.
Yes.
So yeah,
Welcome.
I'm coping okay for the most part because I do have my virtual guru girlfriends, and also I do a lot of podcasts for that too.
Great.
Yeah,
Well, welcome.
thank you.
Thank you for joining. Golfo, I see you online.
Hello, hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. How
Welcome.
are you? I am just thrilled today. I didn't expect this amazing discussion here, and this wonderful messages that I received. Like, Melody, what can I say? I really enjoyed every word you said, and it touched my heart. At times I felt like starting to cry, but I held myself back and I said, I have to absorb all this. I have to put it in perspective. I have to learn how to forgive myself, give mercy to myself, and which I haven't done that. I always blame myself, sometimes for good and sometimes for bad. So even for good things, sometimes I blame myself because the outcome after, it's not all that as great as I thought it was. So a lot of good lessons to learn today, and I'm just very excited to be amongst you. And Sherry, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Ever since I met you, I knew you were a very special lady.
Oh, thank you, Golfo.
We will definitely learn from each other, and just so happy and so honored to meet all of you. I have a long way to go, a long road ahead of me, but listening to you lovely ladies, it just, my heart is, I feel delightful today, and I feel I got a power that I need to, yeah.
And you're in quarantine, I think, right now, aren't you?
Yeah, and I thank COVID for this meeting today, for meeting you ladies. I really thank COVID for many other things, actually, not only for this today, but since the day we got into quarantine, I've got deeper into myself, and I just tried to learn who I really am, because always maybe the fear that something bad might happen to me, and I just realized all of a sudden that I probably don't know myself as much as I thought I do. I found good sides and I find my bad sides too. I have the angel and the devil, a little bit of both in there somehow.
Well, I think it's true. Often we're so busy with our lives that we don't really know ourselves. And that's one thing that this, COVID situation has given women or people in general, is a lot more time to reflect and spend some internal work being time.
Definitely. I know I will be a different person coming out of this. Definitely the one that I wanted to see. So I'm very happy about it. And I'm very honored to be here with you, Melody, today. I will be following you through Sherry's, of course, wonderful magazine. And Liz too. Wow. What can I say? I'm just so thankful, ladies. Thank you. Thank you so much. I thank you from my heart. I have a lot to think. I got notes.
Thank you, Golfo. Thank you very much for that. Just so you know, it's not unusual for people to cry when they're working with me. It's a healing process, and so we cry and we dance and we sing or we shout. It's not unusual for people to feel emotional working with me, and that's all. It's all good.
It's all good.
It's all good.
So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your story today with us, Melody. As I said, these videos are posted on our YouTube channel at 45 Women Disrupting Influences. And we've got a great lineup coming up this afternoon. There is Julianne from Influence Publishers, who is sharing her project on how to write a book in isolation. Oh my God, I'm not sure I could do that, but, but she gives us hope. There's some, oh, actually, no, that's tomorrow. This afternoon, we have a wonderful woman from Saskatchewan who is sharing on her creed in life, which is to focus on the 90% positive. So actually that will be a very inspiring session too. So thank you again. I hope you'll subscribe to our magazine at 45.com, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Sherry.